please tell us more about how you start out as a cartoonist for a start.
Well, I've always been a doodler ever since I was young, and I stumbled into professional cartooning when I won a Straits Times cartooning contest when I was 17, and I was still in junior college at that time. And after the contest, I was approached to do a daily strip for the new paper, for the very first edition of the new paper. And that was the very first strip I did. It was called Orchard Road, and I continued to cartoon for the new paper for the next over 20 years. So
wow. Now, how did you came across doing this wonderful movie called Talking Cock? Because everybody's talking about it, and you even have a blog you actually start first.
That's right. It began when I went to New York to do my master's in law. I went to study at Columbia University, and when I got to New York, I became very, very homesick. And so a group of friends and I, we decided to create a website just for us to post jokes. And they were very Singaporean, we were all Singaporean. And somehow or other, people stumbled upon the site and we began to get a huge readership. It was very new at the time. It was essentially a satirical website. It was like I guess the equivalent of Mad Magazine or The Onion. It's just that nobody had thought of doing it for Singaporean content. So we were out there very early. We had a huge readership. We still have a huge readership, even though the site hasn't been updated in over 2 years. And at that time, I stumbled into filmmaking about the same time as the website. I happened to write and shoot a short film that unexpectedly won a prize. We never thought it was, it was a cheap video, not even as powerful as the video you're using to shoot us now. And we ended up winning a prize. That got us on the road to filmmaking. We had a very popular website. It seemed natural to try to use some of the content of the website to make the movie. So that's how it came about. We were just very lucky to have gotten theatrical distribution, and it's still in print today, and people, it's still available on DVD, and of course it's been pirated. But I still get mail, and curiously enough, from kids who watch Talking Cock. It's the oddest thing.
Now, you chose to write the way you feel, the way you want to express it in a very frank manner, despite having threats been placed upon you by both the local press as well as the government in Singapore that we have heard. Why do you choose to be frank in your expression?
I guess I'm not very smart. There were never any overt threats. I think we should be clear about that. There is certainly pressure. Some of it is interpreted. I think our authorities and establishment are more sophisticated than to, hang a pig's head at your window and say, stop this. There's certainly a feeling of pressure. I do think Singapore is less Orwellian and more Brave New World, I guess more Huxleyan, a society where you intuit what other people want you to do. So we certainly felt pressure, but I think if you are real creative, in whatever field, you are compelled to tell your truth, your own personal truth. And at some point you can't stifle that anymore. I think going to New York inspired me to be braver more than anything. I could see other people around me taking risks with their lives in pursuit of some larger aim, and I liked that. I got inspired, and that's why I kept doing it. Even though certainly there were days when things were scary. When Talking Cock was debated in Parliament, for example, was a truly terrifying day for any Singaporean. But instead of instead of just stopping, I guess we felt we, in some ways, had been given an opportunity, and there was some responsibility to see how far we could push the envelope. And I'm glad I'm not in jail, and that Talking Cock, I think, became part of the consciousness enough. I think the day we stopped updating the site was the day Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong mentioned us in his National Day rally address. That's when we thought, okay, if he's mentioning it in the NDP address, our job is done. Also, we kind of stopped it because I think Singapore has reached a stage. We didn't feel that the site was contributing meaningfully enough to the discourse. People could now just laugh about politics and not take action, and I felt we were complicit in that. I do think we've reached a stage where people should stop poking fun at politicians and getting involved in the political process, whether through volunteerism, whether through helping with a party on either side, or trying to push for policy. And I just felt that helping people laugh allowed them to sit back in their chairs and feel part of the process without actually doing anything. So maybe it's just me, and maybe there will be a time when Talking Cock will come back. But I felt that it had done its bit, and it was time to push for more action rather than just sit back and laugh.
Now, moving forward, you have braved through some of the hardest times in your life in raising funds, in making the movie, in even in your writings and all that so far. How does your wife feel about it? And how did she support you?
Well, firstly, we are a team. We do everything together. We created Talking Cock together. We shot the movies. We co-directed both Talking Cock the movie and Singapore Dreaming together. We are doing Dim Sum Warriors right now together. We are definitely mutually supportive. I think one of the reasons I married her in the first place is I knew she would be more than just a wife. She was my creative partner, and that was a very rare thing. I knew I could do stuff with her, and it's been awesome. I think more than anyone in the world, she taught me how to be brave. I really value and treasure that about our marriage.
Now, moving forward, you actually stopped filming when your daughter was born. And how important was that moment for you?
I think for most people, the birth of a child is like an asteroid strike. I think all parents would agree that your life changes irrevocably when your child is born. For us, our daughter was born severely prematurely. I mean, at 30 weeks, there was no third trimester. When you're that premature, you're exposed to all kinds of health risks. So it was very, very worrying. I was certainly extremely anxious and worried whether she would be okay. Thank heaven she's okay. She hasn't had any health problems. But for a long while, we were worried, and we would hear all sorts of things about things that could go wrong with very premature babies. And that's why we put aside filmmaking, because filmmaking is a very tough process. It requires a lot of time and effort and late nights and erratic schedules, and we felt we needed to devote all our time to our daughter. So we put filmmaking on the back burner, but we still felt the need to do something. And it was a question of what could we do with when you had very limited resources. And that's when we realized, hey, I've been cartooning for over 20 years. I've never done a graphic novel. This is the time to do it. And unlike film, where you need a full crew and a substantial budget, with comics, it was essentially me, paper, and a computer. And there was a lot of freedom there too, to also tell stories that can't necessarily be told in film for budgetary reasons. And in some ways, it was going back to my first love, I guess.
Wow. Now, you came out with this book called the Oxford Singlish Dictionary.
The Oxford Singlish Dictionary.
Oh, yes, that's right. The Oxford. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Now, why do you call the Oxford Singlish Dictionary? And why do you see that Singlish is a dying language?
Well, I don't think Singlish is a dying language. We call it the Oxford English Dictionary. Obviously, it's a play on the Oxford English Dictionary, and it includes a bit of talking cock. That's how the name came about. I don't think it's a dying language. I think it's an evolving language. The language, the Singlish we speak today, is not the Singlish that was spoken 20 years ago. It will not be the Singlish that is heard 15 years from now. It really depends on the people of Singapore at any given point in time. English is not the same as it was before. We don't all speak Shakespearean, we don't speak Elizabethan English, for example, right? The English itself evolves, and so will Singlish. It will be different. The Oxford English Dictionary was an attempt to record the state of Singlish at a given point in time. I'm pretty sure in 5 more years there will be new terms that wouldn't exist. It will borrow more phrases, for example, more from the immigrant communities, from mainland China or from India that are coming. That would be more interesting. A lot of Singlish currently is drawn from Hokkien and Cantonese and Malay. But it will evolve, and I'm very excited to see what it will sound like. Maybe you'll see 2 different groups of Singlish, the new Singlish in Singapore and the classical Singlish. You will find it in Perth, where all the immigrants, Singaporeans went.
So do you intend to have a revision?
Oh, absolutely. This is already the second revised edition. At some point, yes, we will have an updated edition when we have built up enough entries.
Now, moving forward, about the Dim Sum Warriors that you're releasing here in Southeast Asia and throughout the world, why Dim Sum Warriors? How did it come about this idea?
We came up with the idea for Dim Sum Warriors when our child was born. We wanted to do a children's book in honor of our daughter. So we also began to think, what would our subject matter be? What do we like? What did my wife and I really like? And so the book should be about what we really liked. And after a lot of soul searching, we decided that it would be what we really liked was going for dim sum on weekends and watching kung fu movies. So it made absolute sense to do a comic about kung fu fighting dim sum characters. We also put it on an app, and that's how it got a lot of press. Dim Sum Warriors, the iPad app, actually has interactive features that help to support the learning of Chinese, and for Chinese readers it can actually help support the learning of English, complete with audio and translation as well. A lot of this comes from my wife, who's a professor of education. It was Fast Company ranked us as one of the top 10 coolest digital comics of 2012. It was shortlisted for the we got an honorable mention in Publishers Weekly's Best Graphic Novels of 2012. So we are reaching new audiences, especially in the US. We're very gratified to find that we, from this small little island, we are actually getting audiences in America.
Wow. Now, speaking about getting a great number of audiences around the world, what would you say to Singaporeans and, of course, individuals around the world coming from countries that has limited public resources or limited opportunities? What should they do? Because we begin to see that Singaporeans especially tend to be complacent, and they like to probably expect a road that's been laid out for them as a smooth path to success. Would you give advice to those that they should go out and look for opportunities rather than stay in their own comfort zone? What would be your advice?
I think there is a tendency amongst Singaporeans, because we're such a competitive society, that we also demand security. When we embark on anything, we want some guarantee of success, or at least that the path is not too arduous. I think that is a very bad attitude to have if you expect to innovate. When you embark on a creative journey, you have to expect a lot of resistance, a lot of suffering, and a lot of pushback. It's something I see in New York. The great artists of the world always had to suffer for quite a long while. People always think the Beatles, for example, they didn't come from nowhere. They spent years in Germany playing in band, in real dives and bars where people would throw bottles at them. They lived really rough, but they were honing their skills. And that's what I feel we are doing, and that's what our artists and even our entrepreneurs have to learn, is that you have to pay your dues and you have to suffer at the initial stage and to almost relish the suffering. I mean, we always talk about working with passion, and people forget that the root word of passion is the Greek word for suffering, and we must expect to suffer. Also, I think in some ways, some Singaporean creatives look upon success as, when they go out to success, they have a model, they want a model, they want a worked example. And the best artistic work is often about yourself. I think we need to embrace personal truth and not put ourselves down and not try to be who we are not. I think if you go out there and you say, oh, I want to be exactly like so-and-so, then you're not doing anything innovative. You need to find a way to make what makes you special translate to a wider audience. And I don't think geographic size, even the lack of resources, is any bar to it. I mean, one of the most innovative musicians is Björk from Iceland. There are even fewer people there. It's a tinier place. She makes really strange music, but she's getting so much notice. Just by being singular and interesting and working, creating the kind of work she wants to do. And I think we need to, learn more to do that, to trust our own instincts and to value what makes each of us special, rather than trying to follow in someone else's footsteps.
Now, let's talk about the freedom of speech. In Singapore and around Southeast Asia, do you see a change of the way the freedom of speech and censorship of art that has changed over the last 10 years? And moving forward, do you think artists as well as cartoonists and the press are able to express more freely than they used to be? Are governments willing to give freedom?
This is a loaded question. I do think that in some ways, Singapore, I can't speak for all the other countries. In my personal experience with Singapore, there has definitely been some progress in terms of censorship. I do think we have loosened the restrictions a little. Obviously, it is not at a perfect stage. Singapore doesn't have a First Amendment approach to freedom of speech that, say, America does. We don't even have an interpretation of the law like Britain does. You can't expect that all the time. There are certain cultural issues and contextual issues, but I do feel we have made progress. There has definitely been more political speech coming out, but I don't think we should take it for granted. It's not perfect. We have moved in fits and starts, sometimes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It is something that must be constantly fought over, argued, struggled with, and negotiated. So we can't stop now. I do think it's worse in other countries. I mean, there are, in some cases, for example, there have been some good cases. We do see more freedom in, say, theatre performances, for example. There are some pretty brave things that are said on the theatre stage. On the other hand, I thought it was a real step backward when Leslie Chew, the cartoonist, got hammered with the contempt of court action. I don't think it was helpful. There must be a better way of dealing with disagreement in terms of points of view. I mean, having studied law in the States and lived there for a while, I have come over the years to subscribe to the real answer to bad speech is to have more speech. If you disagree with somebody's portrayal of events, you go out there and you argue more forcefully for your point of view. rather than trying to shut the person up. And I think we need to learn that. I think we will be a better society because you're letting the people decide, who is more persuasive.
Well, speaking about persuasion, what's next for you? Are you planning to allow your dim sum warriors and your Coxford English dictionary to evolve, and also what are the plans in the pipeline right now?
Well, the immediate plans are we already have Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Dim Sum Warriors. Volume 3 will come out next year. And we are in talks right now to turn Dim Sum Warriors into an animated film, so that's going to be the focus. Sorry.
Oh.
Maybe I should repeat that.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry, this is terribly rude. Hi, Dad. And right now, we hope to have Volume 3 of Dim Sum Warriors out next year, and we are in talks right now to turn Dim Sum Warriors into a 3D animated film. We are very excited about that. It's kind of ironic. Film led me back into comics, and now comics are leading me back into film. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting next few years.
Now, what would be your one? Could you give us 3 key advice for individuals who are going to pursue their life as artists, as entrepreneurs, as businessmen and women? Because you have been through about more than 20 years as a cartoonist, as a filmmaker, and as a as a writer as well, and self-publishers over in the United States, and you're married as well. How do you manage to balance all of that? And in the first place, many of my viewers are also wondered, how do you met your wife even?
I met my wife when I was giving a talk on cartooning when she was a secondary school teacher, and she invited me to talk, and I ended up asking her for a date. As for advice on doing whatever you want to do, I think the first thing is don't be scared. The second thing is be prepared to suffer. And 3, it's never as bad as you think. If you make a mistake, you pick yourself up, you learn, and you move on. I think one of the too many things is we keep trying to fight the same battles over and over again. We just have to move on. So be brave, be thick-skinned, and be optimistic.
And how can our viewers look out for more information about your books and your footsteps?
Well, I have my wife and I have our own blog, colinandyenyen.com. But they can find me on Facebook and social media. So yeah, look, friend me on Facebook.
Well, once again, Colin, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice. And viewers, please do look up for Colin Goh's blog and get more information, as well as on his Facebook. Well, once again, I'm Robin Stienberg here at the National Critics' Choice. Have a good week ahead.
Thank you very much.